Here in Bengaluru, here in Karnataka, there's still a sense of shock over the death of the founder of Cafe Coffee Day, VG Siddhartha. His body found this morning by the banks of the Netravati, where he had in fact disappeared on Monday evening. The discovery of his body removing that little hope that perhaps he could have survived. Now we are here with concerned citizens, politicians, students, Bengalurians, to talk about what exactly happened. Now, the first thing, the human angle of it. It really does appear as if this was a suicide. A letter which is believed to have been written by him talks of the pressures, of the stress he was facing, and the dog squad which came to the middle of the bridge and lost his sense. It does look as if it was in fact a suicide. Joining us, Dr. Shyam Bhatt, a psychiatrist with MindFit. Suicide rates, of course, huge in Karnataka, in Bengaluru. This is a human tragedy, first and foremost, whatever business goes on, but this is a human tragedy. What could he have done? Who could he have reached out to?
I don't think I can speculate on this particular case because we don't have all the facts, so it would be unfair to speculate. But it's important to understand that, to ask why someone commits suicide and what they could have done is, to me as a doctor, similar to asking why did someone get a heart attack and what could they have done. So it's a fairly complex issue, and essentially when a person feels alone, isolated, feels that the problems that they're facing, that they feel helpless in front of those problems, and they cannot foresee a future out of that. Okay. A combination of helplessness, worthlessness, and isolation is a big risk factor for suicide. That's when people start thinking that, they would rather not live. And in fact, when you work with people who are struggling with this, you realize that, firstly we know, and the data tells us 75 to 90% of people who commit suicide had a diagnosable condition like depression or anxiety that was not diagnosed and not treated. So it's what we need to understand and ask ourselves as concerned citizens is, what are the risk factors that predispose? Because if we ask what happened in his life to cause suicide, that's the wrong way, because you'll say I would not have done it. Yes. Well, it's not what you would have done, it's how you interpreted what happened in your mind. It's not life that torments us, it's our mind and our interpretation that torments us. And when you're depressed, it compounds the guilt. So you know that depression actually makes you more guilty, inappropriately guilty, and causes people to feel that they're a burden on other people. And so I think when you examine this case, these are the facts you must consider. Instead of saying what exactly happened to cause this, we have to understand the entire context of the situation.
Exactly. It's not as easy as drawing a straight line from A to B. He's blamed this, he has said he was under stress for that, which is why he committed suicide. There are several other factors, because as you said, it may not have driven somebody else to suicide. Somebody else might have reacted differently. There are ways for people who are feeling suicidal perhaps to reach out to. They can reach out to. Who do they reach out to?
Well, I think two things. One is families now should be aware, as well as people potentially suffering. There are 250,000 suicides in this country. The number one cause of death, and I'm saying this, I've been shouting this from the rooftops, the number one cause of death for people under the age of 39 in this country is suicide. That means our youth are killing themselves, and we all have to wake up. When something like this happens, if we are profoundly sorry for the family, I wish them, a lot of strength to deal with this, but we must remember that 1,000 people are committing suicide every day in our country. It is an urgent situation. What can we do? Well, firstly, we must be informed. If we are concerned, we must ask. People think to ask somebody puts the idea in the head of suicide. That's not true.
It's not true.
It's not true at all. You can ask.
Yes.
Are you thinking of, hurting yourself or not living or committing suicide? Watch out if someone withdraws, gets more isolated, starts talking about giving away their possessions, and sometimes their mood goes up and down. One day they're really happy, one day they're really down and sad. So if you see any of this happening, then absolutely seek professional help, because just like any other medical condition, you don't have to deal with this alone. We are there, professionals are there as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a terrifying statistic there that the highest cause of death under the age of 39 is suicide. So ask. If somebody in your life you feel is going through trouble, ask them about it. But of course, while this one death has drawn so much attention, it is of course political as well. Naina Muttama of the Congress, it's not just a professional thing, it's a personal loss for you. You knew him well.
Yes, especially my mother, because he came from Mudigere constituency, the estate where his parents and his family lived. was in the constituency which my mother represented for the last 40 years. So it is, in that sense, very, very personal, because my mother's known him for about 30 years, and we've seen his growth. He was someone he was extremely simple, someone who has helped us in many ways, politically, socially, and someone who's done a lot for the region, someone who had a very special place for the people of Chikmagalur and people of his town. He did a lot, and if you see the data, the number of people working in his organization, about 10,000 people are from that region.
From Chikmagalur?
Yes, alone. So about 50,000 people. So obviously it's a personal loss. We took immense pride in him, obviously, because it's a brand that he built, an international brand. For a person coming from a small town like that to go up to that level, obviously it's something that we all, I think the entire country needs to be proud of someone like that. For him to have this kind of death, I think that makes us extremely sad.
Extremely sad. It's extremely tragic death. As Dr. Bhatt was saying, you could not draw a line saying this is why he killed himself. In that letter, though, if it is indeed from Siddhartha, he talks about pressure from the IT industry, and your party, the Congress, Siddaramaiah, have highlighted this aspect.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's something prima facie it appears. I think he's been very clear-cut about it. There were two things that he spoke about in the letter. One was about the harassment that he faced from the DG of from income tax, and two was about the private equity partner itself. I think that's the thing which he says, in fact, created the liquidity crunch for him to drive up to something like this. He's been in business for about 30 years, and not just in one business, multiple businesses, fed 50,000 mouths. So it's not an easy thing for him to do that. So obviously, he faced immense harassment to have done something like this. His father right now is in the hospital, in the ICU. For him to take such a step, such a drastic step, imagine the kind of harassment. This is absolute tax terrorism, what we can understand, because the government, the BJP government, came down very heavily upon him in 2017, and that's led to all of these events.
Tax terrorism, that's a very strong word. We'll go across to the BJP now. Vivek Reddy joining us. Tax terrorism, the Congress tweeting, giving statements saying it is because of the regime, it's because of the misuse, perhaps. IT department overstepping its bounds. How do you respond?
Well, the Congress always would love to come and exploit the situation politically. I think there were questions on Siddharth's IT issues, and he had complained the previous DG. He had no complaint against the existing tax officers. So that event had passed, and that event was not live now. And to blame the tax people generally is unjustified. The tax authorities have also given certain statements and justifications. But the overall issue was that there was a private equity partner also giving a lot of problems for Siddhartha, and that was a live controversy. So if we look at that, I don't think the regime can be blamed as such. But Siddhartha also had huge exposure. We need to understand that. The exposure was humongous. The magnitude was about 8,000 crore. And with such sort of an exposure, the pressures were really high. And those exposures, the government was not responsible for those exposures. It was in his judgment to make investment decisions, and he had taken them. And not that he did not have the capacity to repay. I think having had the capacity to repay, somehow he empowered 50,000 people, but somehow he failed us also. We feel, that is something. I knew him personally also. Yes. He was not such a man. He was not such a man at all. Somehow he has failed us because having had all the assets, he should not have taken that extreme step. That is what we feel. We are very pained.
The BJP saying don't blame the regime here. Shafiullah Sahib of the JDS, you've heard from both sides, and he was the son-in-law, of course, of S.M. Krishna, a long-time congressman, now with the BJP. What is your standing on the tax issue? Do you think he was harassed? Do you believe that is possible?
See, right now, with the available information, I don't think we can come to any conclusion. This is the very sad moment, not only for their own family, but the very sad moment for the whole of the state, whole of the people, because he was providing employment for 50,000 people. It's not a small thing. Having lost such a person in this very bad condition, that is suicide, as it seems to be. It's really a very sad moment, and this is not the time to express who is responsible, who is not responsible. It is better to leave it to the investigation agencies to properly investigate and pinpoint the responsibility. At the same time, I think we should also ponder into the reasons for driving a person to this kind of to take extreme step. As our expert was pointing out, it is better the youths of today, particularly the entrepreneurs, to approach the psychiatrists and consult them in order to see this kind of thing doesn't happen.
Absolutely. Former Chief Minister H.D. Kumaraswamy actually breaking down at the funeral. That is the kind of emotion that the death of V.G. Siddhartha has actually brought out. We talked about pressure on industry, talked about pressure on businesses as well. Mr. C.R. Janardana, President of the FKCCI, where we are now, is there this kind of pressure, the pressure to deal with different regulations, taxations, rules and laws? How much pressure is there on business in India today? Is it so difficult?
Yes, madam. There is absolutely pressure on any industrialist to meet the statutory payments, and industrial slowdown is there. And he has to meet the statutory payments like salaries, gratuities, provident fund, ESI, and other stresses will be there for any industrialist, above which he had commitments and which he was unable to sell the properties and clear at a short interval. So he resorted into an extreme step of suicide. It was not necessary. It's a pathetic condition of Siddhartha, and we really feel sorry for him. And most of the industrialists are facing this problem But I don't think ED has made, because the amount was, ED's claim is only 250 crores. When he is worth of 8,000 crores property, and he would have cleared the entire loan, it would have been liquidated. And there were role models for him, like Vijay Mallya and Nirav Modi have escaped from the country. What prevented him to go for such extreme step? And he should have consulted his father-in-law, who was mentor of this entire country. Sam Krishna is our great leader. He would have helped him. And
he could have found help somewhere. D. Muralidhar, yes. Also from the business community.
Absolutely. I have 4 or 5 factories. I have factories around the world.
Is it difficult? Is the ease of doing business, which everybody talks about, can this cause this kind of stress?
The entrepreneurs are known to have a lot of guts. Otherwise, you don't become an entrepreneur.
It's a risky venture.
It is a risk. Risk and guts go with enterprise. But there are, according to me, in the enterprise which Mr. Siddhartha was managing, the number of unknowns were not many. In a business, there could be many unknowns. You see, when you have a private equity guy coming and investing, you sign on all the conditions. After signing, taking their money and saying that they are harassing you is not fair. Similarly, on compliances also, you know what is expected of you. When you are a taxpayer, you are expected to pay your taxes on time.
So it's not out of the blue.
It is not out of the blue. There are very less unknowns here. And only thing I would like to point out is that a man with so much of guts, who had the tenacity to build his organization from zero to such a big thing, for him to take an extreme step, I think it is not because of business conditions, economic conditions. It may be much more than, like the doctor has said. He probably went into depression and he was not able to handle.
It could be many reasons. Difficult to say it was because of this or that. We have some students here also. Before that, let's just hear what Mamata Banerjee, Chief Minister of Bengal, actually had to say on the entire issue. This is something which has shaken people across the country.
This government won the election, it's okay, you work for the people, you work for the country. But instead of working peacefully in the country, from the day one they started again, whatever they have done last 5 years. Now it is unemployment is very high within these 45 years. Growth also, economic growth also suffered. I'm feeling very sad today because it should not be the future of the industry or the agriculture or the country.
Now, Cafe Coffee Day, it was a brand which everybody knows about. We have students here, lots of young students here. How many of you have been to a Cafe Coffee Day? Every single one of you, every single one of you. It was really part of life. It was it just kind of, how did you respond when you heard about this?
It was quite shocking because Cafe Coffee Day is some place where I hang out every day with my friends to chill out or to have a discussion, meet up, greet. So knowing that the founder of such a great group of institution, he committed suicide. A person who had the guts to build something from zero. He built it from zero, and he committed suicide is quite shocking.
Very, very shocking indeed. And you're so young, it must have been a part of your life from the time you were a child.
Yes, right from completing my projects at CCD till going on dates. I've been to CCD like all the time, like all the time.
Space. It's a safe
Yeah,
space.
absolutely, absolutely. It's such an outlet where the staffs don't come and, tell you order. It's like you can just sit there, chill out, go there, order. Like, it was home. And now, yeah.
It was, in fact, like VG Siddhartha had actually told me earlier, it was an idea of taking the coffee industry further from the plantations. Why not go to the retail level and actually sell coffee? What did Coffee Day mean to you? What does it mean to you?
I don't know, it has always been this one space, I think it was one of the first cafes where you could just, spend some time and not really worry about the standard setting where it's like you sit here until you are done with your food and then you leave. It was never like that.
No pressure to get up if you finish.
Yes, it was a place where you could relax and unwind.
Relax and unwind. So Cafe Coffee Day means a lot to you too?
Yeah, and also I would like to make a point, like going beyond Coffee Day. He's an entrepreneur, he's a business entrepreneur who has had a successful business model. So, young entrepreneurs look up to him who are coming up, like they look up to him. So for him to take such an extreme decision, it hampers the spirit of the younger generation.
Okay. It's a sad thing which has happened really. And yes.
Yeah, ma'am, exactly. I had actually read an article in a national newspaper today that a lot of entrepreneurs have said that compliance costs and these regulations of the government, those companies that are not listed, private companies that are not listed, regulations on these compliances are very complex. Yes. So to deal up with those pressures of the authorities and all those rules and regulations, they actually this hampers the spirit of entrepreneurship. It does. So this entrepreneurs
added stress to somebody who's already feeling perhaps not at his best.
Exactly, and as the gentleman there said, entrepreneurship is a risky venture. You need guts to do that, and the fact that such a person who was accustomed to taking risks succumbed to mental pressure and mental stress, it really raises questions on us as a society because he was not able to reach out to anyone.
Not able to reach out to anyone, as Doctor was saying, we have to reach out.
Only one point I would like to message through this channel is that if you see in the last 1 year, most of the businesses which they have gone underground have not been doing well. It's because of the huge amount of loans they have taken and the interest burden on the businesses. India has one of the countries in the top 25 among the world, which has got the highest rate of interest. So the interest element in the loan component is so high, it could be killing. Just to stretch this argument, if a similar organization was there in any part of Europe or USA or North America, Western Europe, they would have survived because the interest element is very low.
Okay, so he's also saying that the tax element, though, there could be adjustments which could reduce pressure.
Well, I think these regimes, of course, need revisiting. They, of course, need further shaping up. And as India moves ahead, I think we will have to look at those issues, and they will be taken into consideration. But the sort of interest that has been there, as Mr. Muralidharan pointed out, this is what has been there since a long time.
It's not new.
It is not new.
But it still can change. It still can change. Yes, sir.
I think he should have solved this issue by himself. And the assets are more than his liability, and he should not have resorted to extreme step.
It's always very difficult to know what was in his mind at that time. Are you hopeful that there will be answers soon? As you said, investigation has to happen. Are you hopeful of clear answers?
Yeah, of course. You see, I think investigators should also look into one more angle. That is, why the entrepreneurs are pushed to this kind of situation, and I think it's very important in our country. Yeah, the reasons for because there are many people expressing different reasons for this. I think all those reasons has to be
looked into. And are you hopeful that?
I just want to say a couple of things. One, a tragic loss like this, we do not want to exploit the situation. We're just talking about something.
The BJP has said the BJP has said the Congress is exploiting this politically.
I would like to reiterate my point that we are not trying to exploit the situation. I think the doctor made an extremely important point about helplessness. Where did that helplessness come from? The letter clearly indicates that the helplessness came from two situations. Because he had a liquidity crunch that was created by the authorities and the private equity partner. That's the only thing we are stressing on. And we're stressing on this because you're talking about economic growth. Then you provide that. You're the government now. Then you need to do enough to ensure, because we do understand that there is an economic slowdown. Everybody's talking about it. One second, and I just want to say other things about the stock market crashing. It's been, from the time the budget has been presented, it's 4% down. And
so the budget not happen. One quick word from you. We have very little time left.
It's really shocking for the entire industry. And as you know, that banking has been undergoing NPAs. And it's a time to review our introspection, why this been happened, because many corporates creating employment generation. Yes. If this entrepreneur has been killed, the way it's been addressed by the letter, illicit letter and everything, it's really shocking for the industry that which entrepreneur will take.
I know, giving thousands of the last word to you, doctor, because we started with you, we'll end with you. In a situation like that, this isn't necessary. People need to reach out. They need to reach out at this stage. Your thought each time, you said the numbers are high, your thoughts when you hear of cases like this?
I think this is a wake-up call, and I think we begin by trying to understand this. As I said, we don't know all the details, yes. But there is no doubt that one thing is, I've heard the words, he succumbed to it, he shouldn't have done it. He was not weak. No, this was not a weakness. A condition that affects how we feel, and the way we feel is changed by the neurology as well. And I don't, in this particular case, I'm saying in general, that could have happened. And so we need to understand that we should involve professionals just as we would for any other condition, and family and community have to be sensitized.
Seeking help for mental issues is not a shame.
Entrepreneurs tend to be isolated and alone. I think they should come together and support each other as much as possible. That will be helpful.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you very much to the politicians, the industrialists, the students, and of course the doctor for this discussion on VG Siddhartha, a man who will be missed, a man who founded Cafe Coffee Day, giving employment to so many thousands, and a man who appears to have taken his own life. He will be missed. His funeral is on. This is the farewell tribute, really, to VG Siddhartha from here in Bengaluru.